Welcome to the Delighted Customers Podcast. I am so glad you're here. We challenge conventional thinking about customer experience because I believe that improving experiences isn't just good for business, it's a powerful way to make a meaningful difference in people's lives. Each week, we feature thought-provoking conversations with industry thought leaders from a variety of backgrounds, offering unique perspectives and actionable insights. Get ready to sharpen your leadership and transform your approach to customer experience. Let's dive in. Well, today on the Delighted Customers Podcast, I am very excited to introduce my guest, Nick Glimsdahl. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Mark. It's a pleasure being on your podcast, and you're crushing it with over 1 million downloads. So keep the success going.
Well, that means a lot coming from you, who's a fellow podcaster and been doing it way longer than me. In fact, we met in the halls of the conference center at Michigan State University at a conference they had several years ago, and we were setting up our podcast equipment, me less eloquently than you were, because I was extremely clumsy and really had no clue how I was going to do a remote podcast, but that's where we met.
That is exactly where we met, and you had a method to the madness. There was a lot going on there, but you interviewed a lot of people those three or so days.
I am really humbled by the people who can do that all the time on the fly like that. That is just such an incredible gift. So let me introduce you to our audience. You have been in the world of customer experience, really in the world specific to contact center management for a number of years and have seen it evolve over that time. And you have most recently come out with a book with a fantastic title, The Heart of Service. And I don't know how that name wasn't already taken.
When I first thought of it, as I was writing the book, I didn't have a title to begin with. And throughout the book, I started talking about heart and keeping the human part of that conversation when it comes to AI. It just popped in my head, The Heart of Service. And there are other titles that popped in my head as well that did not make the cut because it didn't have... it was already taken, but for some reason this one was not taken. It was the luck of the draw, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it's a great title, Nick. And I was going to ask you what the white space was for writing the book.
Yeah, I think that there's a ton of books out there, and I tried not to be like everybody else. For one, I just wanted it to be a story, and that took a little bit of a challenge and creative channel for me, which I enjoy writing. I never really have written a story before outside of maybe in school, which I did not enjoy, but I wanted to think of the expertise that I had and the people that I have actually interviewed and saying, like, how do I take the knowledge, all of that, and potentially turn it into a story? And, I think a lot of people, including, successful people that have written books on customer service and customer experience, 8 reasons to be like this, and how to be more like Amazon, and how to do this and that. And at the end of the day, I was just like, you know what, there's not necessarily a story, for one, in customer service and customer experience, but number two, it doesn't show the story of the people that are in it, like the behind the scenes, the marketeering. And I wanted to have that be part of the story because I hear it for the last 8 or so years of people just struggling in the muck and the mire of customer service, and I wanted that to kind of shine through this story.
I love that you did that because I think it makes it way more sticky and relatable to people. I remember when I was first recommended to read Silos, Politics, and Turf Wars from Pat Lencioni, and then 5 Dysfunctions of Team, and he wrote a whole bunch of fables, and you almost look forward to reading them because you can... First of all, they're easy reads or quick reads, but there's some meaningful, purposeful messaging that comes through that he kind of summarizes at the end for you into the story, but you get to read the story, so I think it makes it more sticky. What was your thinking on that?
Yeah, I mean, I struggle paying attention for a long time in reading textbook type style books, but, Kendra Hall is another one that is an amazing storyteller. I think Patrick Lencioni is amazing as well. But I gravitate more towards the storytelling aspect, and hopefully that came across.
So tell me about what you've seen. I mentioned earlier about the evolution because you've been around call centers for a while now. How long have you been around call centers, and what would you say, what did you notice in terms of its evolution?
That's a podcast in that question. So 8 years is how long I've been in it. And it's crazy. I feel like it's changed more in the last 8 years than it has in the last 20. So many ways. Obviously, all of the channels are coming together. The AI is just a part of that story, and that's only going to get more and more complex from the back end side of the business. Bringing in knowledge bases, integrating it into the system of your choice to create the best experience. I think that there's been so many bad experiences that I've felt personally. For an example, I'm just trying to think of one. My previous house, when I bought it, about 6 months later, the door handle on the front door, the screen door fell off. And I was like, oh boy, like, what are we going to do here? I couldn't find the name of it. I opened the door and found out who the brand was. I was texting the brand back and forth, and they said, hey, well, can you send me a picture? And I was like, I didn't buy it here. I came with the house. And they're like, great, I have this exact model. I know which one you want, and this is what you need. I was like, great, like, how do we do this? Can I pay you over the phone, or can I pay you via text? And they're like, no, you have to actually call our 1-800 number. I can't transfer you in. I can't do it with any context. You have to actually get back in line. And I was like, man, that is the worst experience possible for a consumer. For one, the thing that we can't get more of is our time, but it's also because all of that 15-minute conversation that I was having back and forth in the middle of dinner and putting the kids to bed, I was now having to call the next morning to deal with that. And I think that context of that conversation is important. I think just the expectation. I think the COVID really escalated that. Yeah, I mean, I think of just before COVID, I wouldn't think of, for one, driving up to the edge of the grocery, texting the grocery store that I'm here and having it deliver in the back of my vehicle and keep on moving, or have it being delivered to my house. And now every single year, every single quarter, potentially every month, my expectation is higher than it's ever been.
Yeah, that is so true. It's why I can't get a spot anywhere near the Walmart front door. Right. They have just reserved all these, because it's probably a good way to get repeat and loyal customers is to be able to do all the shopping for them. We're so used to shopping with the click. So the call center is often thought of as a pulse of the organization, and I always love the quote from someone from Comcast, of all places, in their customer experience area, who said, "Customer service happens when the experience is broken." What's your reaction to that?
It gives me pause to that. I hear what they're saying, but that's not the whole story, right? Like, I think the customer service in the contact center should be just as much proactive on the front of the sale as it is after signature. And so your job is to create the seamless experience from the beginning to the end of that customer experience. And that customer experience, if let's say somebody's buying insurance, what does that process look like before they ever pick the phone up and they're downloading a white paper, or they put their name into some form and you contact them within 30 seconds and you answer all the questions on the channel of their choice, and it goes through that journey, and then they have insurance with you for 27 years. That is the customer journey, and I think the customer service is now part of all of that, from the front end to the back. And so I would challenge that person, and I've heard that before, but I would say that that's also part of the journey. I think that customer experience is part of customer service.
Well, Nick, speaking of customer service, let's dive into the book a little bit without giving us any spoilers away.
Yeah.
Tell us about the main characters of the book and what the struggle they're dealing with.
Yeah, so I think that the biggest one is Chloe Chen. So Chloe Chen is the main character of the book, and at the very beginning she doesn't have a whole lot of experience, and it kind of goes through I think it's 8 years of the journey of this company called Carelio, and it's a large company, but she looks around the organization and just sees how broken it is, and the customer retention is not as high as they want it to be. The employee attrition is way too high. The morale is there. The CSAT and NPS and all the other metrics are tanking. And she's looking around the competition and they're blowing them out of the water. And she's like, what, there's got to be a better way, right? And so she looks at something as simple as her father's restaurant and notices that they're creating a better experience with no technology than a massive organization is delivering with technology. And so she starts writing down these notes on ways to improve the experience. And she doesn't really know how, and she doesn't know the right technology, but she starts listening. She brings it to the front end of the employees, and she's like, listen, I'm not here to tell you and get buy-in immediately, but I'm here to just listen. And then she starts building this platform, and she meets with her direct boss, and then eventually she gets a meeting with the CEO, and she has to find a way to get buy-in with the CEO. And then from there, she has to start building a team and convincing the team why this is a good idea, because a pilot in AI has already failed once. And so this isn't going to fail again. And so you're going through this process, and there's all sorts of naysayers that come through the process and say, this isn't going to work, and you're just trying to take my job, and I'm tired of this process, and I'm not going to be part of it. And so it's a pretty big journey, and it was a big uplift, but it was there's a lot to that story.
Well, I love the scenario. It's true in many ways. Although there's many restaurants that don't work out, but if she found one that was doing some things right, her dad's restaurant, then a great way to learn and use those concepts and theories to run a call center, or at least build the principles around it. I was going to ask you, when you think about the model that she used and you think about the book itself as you wrote it, what were some things that kind of unraveled as you were writing it that you didn't know about until you started writing it?
I didn't realize that it was going to be also focused on change management. I was going to think of ways that the system is broken, the legacy mindset, getting executive buy-in, but the process and the people through the journey, I didn't expect me to go into that much detail and bringing all of these separate characters in, bringing a consultant in from that the CEO recommends that we won't spoil. But there's a lot to that process that I didn't really. The more I was trying to build some of the character development, the more I was like, I got to start bringing individual characters and their personal stories into the why of this journey.
So share with us, if you wouldn't mind, and illustrate maybe one of the characters that was an antagonist to Chloe in her journey.
Ooh. So Mr. Blackwell, who is the CEO, is kind of an antagonist at the beginning. He threw a few nasty grams at the beginning. They're not saying it was super bad, but there was, trying to think of, there was a couple, but there was some of the C-suite really drilled her because she had to present to the C-suite as well. So I won't name a specific character, but I would say the C-suite in general really let her and her team have it and kind of drilled them like a lot of the C-suite would.
Right.
And she had to stand up for herself with the right data to present that information to move forward. And when things don't go as planned, they had to talk to him again. And so there was a couple there. I think the front line had a voice as well. There was a lady specifically that said, I've been part of the last AI pilot and it botched. What makes you think that this is going to be a successful one? So she had to stand up to that one as well.
Yeah, I love that. And that's very much a reality of what you're dealing with is people who are burn victims.
Yeah.
And you got CEOs, and quite frankly, the CEO wants his or her lieutenants to be questioning and challenging early on to make sure that, the risk is mitigated. What were some effective strategies that Chloe used to help win the day? Struggling to connect the dots across your customer journeys? You're not alone. For many CX professionals, journey mapping is still manual and fragmented, especially in large organizations. JourneyTrack changes that. Their platform unifies journey mapping, management, and measurement in one place, giving you a real-time view of every touch point. Uncover friction, align teams, and prove the ROI of your CX initiatives so you can make smarter decisions and deliver smoother journeys. Want to see how AI can help you map smarter, not harder? Download our free white paper at journeytrack.io/podcast or click the link at the end of the show notes to get started with AI-powered journey mapping in minutes.
To win the day, she didn't just come with emotion. She came with emotion and results. She came with emotion and data. She came with emotion and the team. And I think that helped. I think with some of the conversations, so one of a chapter or two, she had to actually listen to the vendors pitch their story on why they think they're the right fit for the outcomes that they're hoping to achieve. And she let them pitch their story, but then she brought the right team to have their case as well. I think bringing in that front line also was helpful. I think that's a challenge just in the marketplace is the leadership tends to make a decision without actually listening to what the customer wants and or what the front line is pain points are. And so when they make that presentation and it goes live, a lot of times that front line's like, well, for one, we didn't ask for this. For two, you didn't get our input. And for three, we know everything that the customer is complaining about and you just didn't care, right? And I think that Chloe asked all of those.
Just to affirm what you're saying, Nick, when I worked at the bank I worked at, there was a proposal in for a long time to get some sort of core operating system besides the one that the bank leaned on to help pull together the call center data and information from the branch network and commercial lenders, et cetera. And it did not get traction. It kept getting visited and questioned, but it never got traction until we did something called the executive listening, and it was part of the year of empathy we had. And we brought the executives into the call center, had them put on a headset, listen in on the calls. Yeah. What they witnessed was not only the kinds of calls the customers were calling in about, but the challenge that the frontline contact agents had with trying to respond. So, some of the questions were guaranteed they couldn't respond on the first call. Guaranteed, because they'd have to wait for a call back from somebody else. And so when they got to see this firsthand, they realized the pain not only the customers were going through, but the employees were going through. And 7 different systems that were unbundled, not connected to each other, that required so much additional work and so much stress and anxiety for the front line. So I don't know if that's been your experience, but ultimately that got them to make a decision rather quickly. I would say within the next 3 months, they made a $3 million decision on a Salesforce.com application that ended up pulling, one middleware into another into this integrated system. So we had a 360-degree view of the customer.
Yeah, and I'd say that is key. And one thing that I like to do too, if the organizations that we work with lets us, is we'll do a 3-day assessment or a week-long assessment and interview the frontline, the managers, the leaders, and then the people that are actually making the decision, and then potentially even the customers, to identify what is actually broken before you start talking about technology. I think everybody starts at the technology and works backwards to the problem instead of the other way around.
Yeah. And I failed to mention that you work at VDS and you're a consultant, so you get to see a variety of all these different companies and all these different problems, so you have the benefit of all these different experiences.
Yeah, it's been fun. I think I tried to take little nuggets of different prospects or clients that I've worked with in the past and saying, hey, how would they approach this scenario and what questions would they have asked in this process? I've had all sorts of conversations over the 8 years that I've been at VDS, and it gave me plenty of content to create around.
Nick, in all those conversations, what do you see as some of the missteps that leaders make when it comes to running a successful contact center?
Yeah, I'd say that they do a few things. One is when it comes to AI, they try to just turn AI up for AI's sake, right? We talked a little bit about pre-recorded is you turn on a chat bot or you turn on something like that. Like what does a chat bot mean and what's the outcome you're hoping to achieve? And the same thing is true with anything. People are not focused on the outcome, they're focused on the task. And I think that's a challenge in the marketplace. I'd say for two, the manufacturers don't help them solve a problem. They are selling features and functionality and trying to do it as quick as possible to move on to the next round. And it's the quick close and then just keep on running. I would say that organizations or even partners need to be more strategic in the conversations and asking the right questions and helping them see what's behind the curtain and taking that second, third, and fourth look of what's spending time with them, ultimately understanding what their needs are, and then asking questions that that you typically wouldn't ask, because everybody looks pretty from a marketing perspective. One line or a one-page document or a really pretty 20-minute demo. But if you get behind the scenes, you look at the admin and the user experience and spend time and digging, that's the challenge. I would say that there's also people that over-automate, right? They tend to go too much, and then they don't have the right knowledge base, or they don't have the right integration working, and they didn't really think of that holistic picture to solve that customer experience or to drive efficiencies or to meet outcomes. And so those are just the ones that are top of mind.
Well, can you give me an example, or give us an example of a question that's not ordinarily asked in these kind of conversations when you're setting up a new customer and you're probing for what they currently have in place, or maybe even what their goals are?
Yeah, it really depends on the situation, and I think that when I was fully admitted, when I first got into the business, I would ask very superficial questions because I didn't know the questions that you should be asking. And I think what you should do is you can ask that first level of questions, but they don't add a whole lot of value. But the next level of questions are like, what are you working on today, or that you wish you wouldn't, right? And then let's work backwards to that. Or what's the fully loaded cost of that agent? Because I think people tend to get cautious about AI, and I think you should, but you have to make sure that aligns with the outcome. But you also think of AI is going to be, it's a big one-time cost, and then there's a recurring cost depending on what that rate is. But they're not thinking about the lost opportunity cost. They're not thinking of the customer lifetime value. They're not thinking of the loaded agent costs that are answering those phone calls. And so I think what you should be thinking of is what are the outcomes you're hoping to achieve, and what's changed in your guys' industry, and how would you differentiate in the marketplace if you could, right? And then slowly start pulling away from that to ask harder questions. But most people just say, hey, I have this amazing technology. Do you want it? And I can have it turned on in 2 weeks if you want to, and I could be the cheapest cost. But I think the challenge that I see is that people think of the lowest cost, and the lowest price means the lowest cost. And that's not actually true, because typically a minimal viable product that gets turned on is actually going to be more expensive for your business than that cost that you're paying, that you would have paid with the higher tier.
And the stakes are probably higher than most people realize when it comes to this whole thing. How would you describe the stakes?
So say that question one more time.
In terms of the risk and the stakes that leadership should be concerned about when it comes to this whole topic, and kind of balancing human interaction, context interaction, having a good long-term strategy. What are the stakes?
Well, what's at risk is your customers can go to any other competitor as easy as that next renewal. And a lot of times there's outs to those renewals. And like we talked about at the very beginning of this episode, is the expectations are higher than ever. In the past, you would buy a specific laundry soap because probably your parents bought a specific laundry soap and you just decided to follow suit. And same with insurance, and same with things that you pay for a long time. Now that's not the case. What's the average? That if somebody has 1 or 2 bad experiences with your company, they will go to the competitor and at the equal or same cost, and people actually pay more for your service at a higher price. And so if that's the case, you're leaving money on the table, and you're losing money on the back end because your competitors or your customers are not staying with you for the long run.
Yeah, and the acquisition cost to replace that customer, and the bad word of mouth, and all these other things. So that's a big deal. Well, this has been a great conversation. The Heart of Service is the name of the book. And Nick, I want to ask you one more question before we land the plane here. It is, what delights you as a customer?
Yeah, I would say what delights me as a customer is it's not hard, right? I want people to know who I am when I'm interacting with them, if I have to authenticate or not. And I want them to know if I've called back in the past. I want people to do it with a smile, whether they can help me or not in that first interaction. And I just want them to care. right? I think the importance of caring isn't difficult. You need to have the knowledge and expertise, I think, is fine. But if the care is behind the coordination of that experience, I'm going to be more willing to accept a mistake, or when my internet goes out on accident because I didn't renew my credit card, or I didn't give them a new credit card, which just happened last week. But it's how you respond to the experience when it breaks. And a lot of times individuals will before they get on a call, they'll listen. I always have this analogy that you listen to the Rocky soundtrack, do the 20 push-ups and get ready to tear the customer service rep a new one. And in reality, that person on the other end is going through a lot too, right? And I never think of that. At least I didn't before I came into customer service. I'd always think of like, this person's going to ruin my day. I'm already mad, and I'm about to ruin their day too. And now I just have a little bit more empathy for them, and I'm like they're bringing their whole life to the role that they're in, and they're getting paid for it, and this is their job. Maybe they're not their career, but why should I rip them a new one when I can also have a good experience? And I'd say that, to bring it full circle, part of the delight is how I approach that experience too. Because there's a lot of times when I would approach the experience and just be like, hey, Mark, thanks for your time. How are you doing today? And just kind of break the mold and hear what they're, when I'm not having a great day. Oh yeah, what's going on? And you take 5 seconds to know the person, or if they can't help you, just be like, you know what? Sounds like you did everything you could. Thanks so much. Is there anything else that you could potentially do to make this a better experience? And you're just like enjoying the process. And I think the delight comes from both sides.
Yeah, some schooling for us on the consumer side.
Yes.
Nick, thank you so much for being a guest on the Delighted Customers Show. Again, the book, The Heart of Service, Nick Glimsdahl. Thanks again, Nick.
Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Delighted Customers Podcast. It would mean so much if you would take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts, click on the plus sign or follow button, and that will ensure that you don't miss an episode, and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave a 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday.